Welcome back, everyone. We're diving into the world of Renaissance popes today.
A fascinating time, to be sure.
It really is. A time of incredible artistic flourishing, of course, but also some serious political maneuvering, some pretty cutthroat power struggles.
And let's be honest, some larger-than-life figures.
Absolutely. And few embody that era quite like the one we're looking at today.
Pope Alexander VI.
Pope Alexander VI, born Rodrigo Borgia. I mean, the name Borgia itself is practically synonymous with
Scandal.
scandal and intrigue.
Wait, exactly.
I've got a stack of articles here. Someone even sent me a YouTube video. It seems like everyone has an opinion on this guy. But let's go beyond those headlines. What made Alexander VI such a captivating figure, such a controversial pope?
Well, it really begins with his rise to power. Born into a prominent Spanish family.
The Borgias.
The Borgias, of course. In the Crown of Aragon, which is now part of Spain. Powerful connections right from the start. But he was also incredibly clever, ambitious.
And not just riding on the family coattails.
Not at all. He was a man who made his own fortune, so to speak.
Well, I'm looking at his timeline here. Studied law at the University of Bologna. Became a cardinal at just 25 years old. That's young for anyone, let alone someone rising in the church hierarchy.
Exactly. Shows you his shrewdness, his ability to network, to maneuver. And he went on to serve under 5 different popes, gaining invaluable experience.
Building up that influence.
Oh, absolutely. And, of course, along the way, amassing a considerable amount of wealth.
Can't forget about the wealth. It's hard to talk about the Borgias without talking about their fortune. But I guess that's how it worked back then. Wealth equaled power.
Absolutely. And Rodrigo Borgia, he knew how to accumulate both. And all of this leads us to 1492, a pivotal year for so many reasons. Not only did Columbus reach the New World, but Rodrigo Borgia was elected pope, taking the name Alexander VI.
So that's how he gets to the top. But I'm seeing some red flags here in these sources. It sounds like this election, it wasn't exactly a model of fairness. Whispers. More like shouts, I think. Accounts of bribery, even mentions of, like, mule loads of silver changing hands.
Ah, yes, those infamous mule loads of silver. Hard to deny those, even for the most devoted Borgia supporter.
So maybe not the most, shall we say, ethical rise to power.
Perhaps not. But bribery aside, Alexander VI's papacy, it began with some significant actions. He confirmed Spain's claims in the New World.
Good.
A series of papal bulls, official documents issued by the Pope, and this eventually led to the Treaty of Tordesillas, essentially dividing the New World between Spain and Portugal.
So right off the bat, he's playing a role in shaping global exploration colonization. That's a huge impact.
Absolutely.
Even before we get into, well, some of the other stuff.
Speaking of which, we can't ignore the aspect of Alexander VI's life that really solidified the Borgia reputation.
Yeah, I think we know where this is going.
He fathered several children.
Openly acknowledged.
Very openly.
Now, I know that wasn't completely unheard of for popes back then, but Alexander VI, he seemed to really embrace it.
He did. And he wasn't simply acknowledging these children. He actively used his position to advance their interests.
Really built a dynasty.
Precisely. His son, Ciazai, became a cardinal. His son, Giovanni, the Duke of Gandia. He arranged marriages strategically, redistributed land, titles. He was creating a Borgia dynasty.
So not just fatherly love. This is about power legacy. And I imagine this nepotism, as they call it, didn't exactly sit well with everyone.
It certainly rubbed some people the wrong way, even back then, but family, it was everything to Alexander VI. It's a key factor in understanding his motivations.
Okay, so we've got ambition, power plays, family drama. What comes next in this saga?
Well, all of this is happening against the backdrop of a very volatile Italian peninsula.
Right.
Remember, Italy at this time, not a unified country.
Okay.
A patchwork of competing city-states, foreign powers, all vying for control. Alexander VI had to navigate this.
Sounds like a high-stakes game of chess.
It was. And one of the articles I was reading mentioned him playing France and Spain against each other.
Using their rivalry to his advantage.
Exactly. Always looking for ways to strengthen his position and that of his family. And this is where things get even more interesting. In 1494, King Charles VIII of France invades Italy, throws the entire peninsula into chaos.
Wow, so now he's not just dealing with Italian rivals, he's got foreign armies marching across his territory.
He does.
Talk about pressure.
Indeed. And as if things weren't complicated enough, tragedy strikes within his own family.
Oh.
His son, Giovanni, the Duke of Gandia, is found dead in the Tiber River.
Oh, wow.
Under very mysterious circumstances.
What happened?
To this day, we don't know for sure. Some suspect the Orsini family, bitter rivals of the Borgias. Others point fingers at other powerful figures.
A real-life Renaissance murder mystery. It sounds like being Pope wasn't all fancy robes and processions.
Yeah.
He had some serious enemies,
He did.
both inside and outside the church.
Speaking of enemies within the church, there's one we can't leave out, Girolamo Savonarola,
Okay.
a Dominican friar who became incredibly popular in Florence, preaching against corruption in the church, denouncing the Pope himself.
So we've got this fiery preacher calling out the Pope for corruption. I can't imagine that went over well in Rome.
It didn't. Alexander tried to appease Savonarola initially, offered him a cardinal's hat, actually.
Wow, to tone down his criticism.
Exactly. But Savonarola refused. He saw himself as, well, a prophet, divinely appointed to cleanse the church.
He must have been pretty charismatic to challenge the Pope so directly.
He was. And for a time, Savonarola held immense power in Florence, went so far as to excommunicate Alexander.
Really? Excommunicated the Pope? That's a bold move.
It is, basically declaring the Pope no longer in good standing with the church.
So what happens? Does the Pope just ignore this?
Not exactly. Alexander was a shrewd politician. He knew this couldn't go unanswered. And eventually, he used his influence to orchestrate Savonarola's downfall.
Downfall meaning?
Arrest, trial, execution in 1498.
It's almost Shakespearean, this clash. A powerful Pope, a fiery reformer. It really highlights the power dynamics of the Renaissance. It wasn't just about armies and territories. It was about controlling the narrative.
Absolutely. Shaping public opinion, holding on to power. And Savonarola's demise, it served as a warning to anyone else considering challenging Alexander's authority. But despite all these controversies, Alexander VI, he had another side to him. He was a significant patron of the arts.
Really?
Like Bramante, Raphael, Michelangelo. These giants of the Renaissance, they all benefited from his patronage.
That's interesting. I always associate the Renaissance with this explosion of creativity, but I don't usually think about the popes as being the driving force behind it.
Well, it might seem surprising, but many popes during the Renaissance, they saw art as a way to enhance the church's prestige and their own legacy, of course.
Yeah.
Alexander was no exception, commissioned major works of art, supported talented artists, oversaw renovations, construction projects in Rome.
So he's this complex figure, a ruthless politician, a loving father, a patron of the arts. It's hard to pin him down.
It is, and even when we look at his efforts to reform the church, we see this complexity. He took steps to address corruption within the Curia.
The Curia?
The papal bureaucracy was a major source of criticism at the time.
Wait, so the guy who's openly using his position to benefit his family is also trying to reform the church?
He was. Alexander was a pragmatist. He understood that the church's credibility was eroding. Something needed to be done. He assembled a group of cardinals known for their piety, tasked them with drafting new rules.
New rules to do what?
Curb the sale of church offices, limit the number of benefices a cardinal could hold, enforce stricter moral standards for the clergy.
So was he genuinely trying to clean up the church's act? Or was this just, a way to consolidate his power, silence his critics?
It's hard to say for certain. Likely a combination of factors. He wanted to appear responsive to the calls for reform, but he also wanted to strengthen his control over the church. His actions, as always, served multiple purposes.
It sounds like Alexander was always playing the long game, thinking several moves ahead. And it seems he was pretty successful at consolidating papal power, at least within the papal states.
He was. He managed to bring those powerful families under control, the Orsini and Colonna, who had long challenged papal authority, and he expanded the papal states through diplomacy, military force.
It's incredible to think about the level of political maneuvering that must have been going on behind the scenes. This wasn't just about religious authority, it was about real politics.
Absolutely. Territory, alliances, the balance of power in Europe. And Alexander, he was a master at playing that game. He understood that power was fluid, that alliances shifted constantly, and you always had to be ready to adapt. Seize opportunities.
He sounds like a fascinating character to study, but also kind of terrifying. Imagine being on the wrong side of him.
I wouldn't want to be.
But ultimately, even the most powerful popes, they don't rule forever. Alexander VI's reign came to an end in 1503. What do we know about his death?
Well, like many things in his life, his death is shrouded in mystery. Officially, malaria. Okay.
But there were persistent rumors of poisoning.
Poisoning. By who?
Some even accused his own son, Caesar, of orchestrating it.
Wow. Another unsolved mystery. It seems fitting, I guess, for a figure whose life was so full of intrigue. But beyond the scandals, the power struggles, what's the lasting impact of Alexander VI? How should we think about his legacy?
That's the question historians continue to debate. He's often remembered for his excesses, the corruption, the nepotism. But he also oversaw a period of incredible artistic achievement and played a key role in shaping the geopolitical landscape of Europe.
It's almost like he embodies both the brilliance and the darkness of the Renaissance. All that creativity, intellectual flourishing, but also the ruthless ambition, the political maneuvering.
Precisely. And I think it's important to avoid those simplistic judgments when we look back at figures like Alexander VI.
Right.
He was a product of his time. His actions, they reflect the complex, often contradictory nature of the Renaissance. So we've got this complicated legacy, positive and negative contributions. It makes you wonder, would the Renaissance have unfolded the same way without a figure like Alexander VI at the helm of the church?
The million-dollar question. It's impossible to say for sure, but it's an interesting thought experiment, isn't it? I mean, he was the Pope during this period of massive change, upheaval, the rise of humanism, the rediscovery of classical knowledge, a shift in the balance of power across Europe.
He's both a product of those changes and a driving force behind them.
Exactly, and that's what makes him so fascinating. He wasn't just passively presiding over these events, he was actively shaping them, using his power, his influence to further his ambitions and those of his family.
And even his efforts at reform, were those genuine attempts to address corruption, or were they just calculated moves to silence critics, consolidate power?
Likely a bit of both. He was a shrewd politician, understood the importance of optics, but he also seems to have genuinely believed in the need for reform, at least to some extent.
It's a reminder that history is rarely black and white. These figures from the past, they were complex individuals, their own motivations, flaws, aspirations. And trying to judge them by our modern standards, it's a fool's errand.
Absolutely. We have to try to understand them within the context of their own time. The social norms, the political realities, the cultural values that shaped their worldviews.
It's a good reminder for us today, too. Things are rarely as simple as they seem.
Exactly. There's always more to the story, more layers to uncover, more perspectives to consider.
Well, I know I'll never think about the Borgias or the Renaissance the same way again. This has been an eye-opening deep dive.
That's what we hope for with these deep dives, to challenge your assumptions, spark your curiosity, leave you with more questions than answers.
Because sometimes the questions are more interesting than the answers.
Precisely. So, dear listener, as you go about your day-to-day, remember Pope Alexander VI, the ambitious, cunning, complex figure who navigated those treacherous waters of Renaissance Italy.
Remember that history is full of these fascinating characters, each with their own story to tell.
And remember that the past, it's never truly past. It shapes our present, continues to influence the world we live in today.
So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep into that rich tapestry of history. Until next time.